Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Jutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. Check out these monitors behind me. These are feeds coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates around the country. If it's happening out there, we're going to bring it to you live right here in Studio 55. Let us begin, of course, as we have over the last couple of days, with the death toll that is climbing now in Los Angeles due to those wildfires. As heavy winds complicate the ongoing effort to contain the massive flames, we're going to take you there live. Plus, a busy week on Capitol Hill as confirmation hearings begin for President-elect Trump's cabinet picks, who's up first, and when some of the most controversial choices will face questions from the Senate. And 15 years later, Haiti is still rebuilding after massive deadly earthquakes shattered infrastructure and displaced millions. How the recent surge in gang violence is impacting those efforts. This is CBS News 24/7. But we begin this hour with the deadly wildfires in California that have now tragically claimed the lives of at least 24 people. Crews are racing to gain control because of the powerful winds in the forecast that could lead to additional spread. One Altadena resident spoke to 60 Minutes about how quickly the fire destroyed his home.
And out of nowhere, you see the fire appear across Lake Street, and you can see it going up the mountain on our side within an hour. For it to move that quickly and that rapidly, and for it to shift paths that fast was insane. This is unreal. Oh my God. My house is
I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Elise Preston for more on this. Elise, that is just one person on one street in one community. But as you know, this story, that pain, that heartbreak, that anguish is one that is being felt by thousands, if not hundreds of thousands across Los Angeles. How are things developing on the ground this morning with those Santa Ana winds coming in?
Yeah, so they are expected to pick up, Vlad, and they are expected to top out at about 70 miles per hour. So you can see that is just a huge concern here because the Eaton fire, where it has struck Altadena, where I am right now, where that man who shared his story, where he was, the Eaton fires only contain about 27%. And so firefighters are concerned that these winds are going to be able to kick back up and spread that fire, spread all of the fires even more. And it is happening in just an instant. I've been in these neighborhoods, in these communities where you would see an ember and then a gust of wind would kick up out of nowhere and burst into flames. And you would see it basically flying across the street, flying down the street and spreading at a very, very rapid pace.
We're showing live pictures there, Elise, on the ground in Los Angeles so people can get a sense of the devastation that's occurred just in the last week. But now the question, of course, this is the live picture that we're talking about here. This is happening right now in Los Angeles, and it's just utterly devastated, completely wiped out. So the question, of course, becomes, are the folks who've lost their homes, who've lost, in many cases, everything, and thankfully still have their lives, are they able to get the resources that are available to them? What kind of resources are being made available?
Well, a lot of resources have poured in, both from the federal and state level. And then you're seeing a lot of humanity here. You're seeing a lot of people really just open up their hearts and give. We've been with families. We were with a family yesterday, and some man came up to them and said, "Are you a victim? Were you impacted by the fires?" And the family said yes. And the man reached into his wallet, pulled out $100 and just gave it to the family and walked off. You're seeing a lot of that. We went to this community drive where a man, it started with 2 hot dog carts and 500 hot dogs. And so this man put out on a call on social media for people to respond. And boy, did they. They've been showing up in hundreds, in droves, just responding, giving donations of food, of clothing, of household necessities. And those are the things that people need immediately, right? This home that I'm standing in front of, we were actually here yesterday with the family that lost their home. And the mom said, "Son, you didn't bring better shoes. These shoes aren't good. We're going to be walking around. It's dangerous." And he said, "Mom, these are the only shoes that I have." And I think it just struck her like, how many things that they need just to get by in this immediate aftermath. But as you said, it is going to be a long process. Some family members, some families who have been hit, they had insurance, and so they plan to rebuild. But others, they're not so fortunate. They're saying that they lost their insurance either right before or during the fires. The state has come out and said that the people who have insurance through the state's marketplace, they will consider fast-tracking those claims so that it can help people get back on their feet. But people recognize that it is going to be a long and hard process to endure, Vlad.
Indeed. Elise Preston for us this morning. Elise, thank you very much. Well, FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell says she is concerned that the powerful winds in the area have changed the dynamics of the fire, and she fears for the safety of the firefighters. She spoke with Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation this week, where she pushed back on claims that L.A. officials were unprepared.
I think that they were very prepared. This is something that they are very used to. They fight fires all the time, but they have never seen 100-mile-an-hour winds that are fueling the fire. And those winds and that weather condition is what really impacts, where this fire is going to go, but more importantly, how they're able to try to contain it in those first few hours and days. And because it was in such a populated area, it just makes it that much more challenging to be able to get in there and secure the perimeter, but as well try to save as many homes as possible.
And if you're looking for a way to help the victims of these wildfires, you can go to redcross.org/CBS. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Vlad. And of course, the big story once again is the fire danger in Southern California because the winds are picking back up. We have a red flag warning to tell you about in that part of Southern California, and that is only going to serve to continue to fan these flames. So let's take a look at conditions. This is our fire weather outlook for today. And again, you can see the worst of it where you see the pink just north of Los Angeles County there. That's where we have extreme fire danger today. Winds could gust 50 to 70 miles per hour once again. So the winds died down a little bit. We got some containment, but now the threat for further fire spread is increasing through today and into tomorrow as well. Strongest gusts are in the mountains, very dry air as well. Relative humidities in the 10 to 15% range, and that's all day today and all day tomorrow. It may come up a little bit as we head into Wednesday, but here's tomorrow's fire weather outlook, pretty much the same with that extreme fire danger just north of Los Angeles County. That's where the most extreme threat for additional fire spread and additional fires to start. That's where the threat is. You can see most enhanced north of Los Angeles. Look at those gusts. This is later on this afternoon, gusts to 50 miles an hour. Tonight into the overnight, we could have gusts up north of Los Angeles, up towards Santa Clarita of 60 or 70 miles per hour and a red flag warning in effect. Vlad, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Kate Bilo, thank you very much. We'll check in with you a bit later. It's going to be a whirlwind week of confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill. More than a dozen of President-elect Donald Trump's administration picks will be getting grilled by lawmakers, and that's going to begin as soon as tomorrow. 14 are up for questioning this week alone. That includes Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth, who begins the process tomorrow, and Trump's choice for Attorney General Pam Bondi, who will appear twice. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told CBS News many will get through, but, quote, we'll see about all of them. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins me now to discuss. She's in West Palm Beach, Florida. All right, Nancy, good to see you. What's the latest that you're hearing on the push to release Pete Hegseth's FBI background check before his hearing, which will begin tomorrow?
Right. This is a big fight on Capitol Hill, Vlad. Good to see you. Pete Hegseth, as you'll recall, faced a really bumpy start to his confirmation process. Lots of questions raised about mismanagement of both staff and finances at a couple of veterans groups, questions about sexual misconduct in the past, questions about his personal behavior, and those questions linger. Republicans had argued, look, the FBI is going to look into all of this, and then we'll have all the facts. Well, the FBI has looked into it. It has shared what it found with the top Democrat and the top Republican on the Armed Services Committee, which will be holding the hearing tomorrow, the confirmation hearing for Hegseth. But there are other members of that committee who are saying, hey, I'd really like to see what's in that background report as well. Mostly Democrats, in fact, all Democrats right now, who are saying they have deep concerns about Hegseth. They want to know exactly what the FBI found. Republicans are pushing back. They say this is standard protocol. That information simply goes to the chair of the committee, the ranking member of the committee, and then it filters down. Democrats are arguing this is a special case. In the words of Tammy Duckworth, the Democratic senator from Illinois who is on the committee, who is a veteran herself, who lost her legs in combat, she says Pete Hegseth has managed fewer people than the manager of an Applebee's and therefore deserves additional scrutiny. This confirmation hearing is going to be quite a barn burner tomorrow, Vlad.
So, Nancy, during that confirmation hearing, the information that was gathered for this FBI background check, will members of the Senate use? I'm wondering, how does it play into the confirmation hearings? How are senators prepared to ask questions if they are not familiar with whatever that FBI background check came up with?
Well, whether they have the information or not, there's still a lot of questions they're going to ask. They're going to ask about allegations of sexual misconduct. They're going to ask him, for example, are you facing any other lawsuits that we don't know about? Are you facing any other allegations that could interfere with your ability to run the largest military on Earth? They'd like to have all the facts before them when they ask those questions. They'd like to know what the FBI found as pertains to those questions. If they don't have it, it's not going to stop them from asking. It's just going to mean that they're going to have to either take Hegseth's word for it, or they're just going to press him all that much harder to try to get to the truth.
All right, Nancy Cordes for us this morning. Nancy, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
FBI Director Christopher Wray is speaking out on his planned resignation before President-elect Trump takes office. Wray oversaw the largest case in FBI history. That is, of course, the investigation into the January 6th Capitol attack. In his only broadcast exit interview, Wray spoke with Scott Pelley for 60 minutes about his departure.
The president-elect had made clear that he intended to make a change, and the law is that is something he's able to do for any reason or no reason at all. My conclusion was that the thing that was best for the Bureau was to try to do this in an orderly way, to not thrust the FBI deeper into the fray.
CBS News Justice Department reporter and producer Rob Legary joins us now to talk about this. So, Rob, in addition to the Trump classified documents investigation, of course, Christopher Wray led the investigation into President Biden's handling of classified documents, in addition to President Trump's handling of those documents. How is Wray reflecting on his leadership?
Hey, good morning, Vlad. Good to see you. So, as we saw in that interview and in that clip that just preceded your question, Wray wanted to take the focus, he says, from him to the men and women of the FBI. And so when the intention was broadcast from the president-elect that he intended to replace Wray with an ally, Kash Patel, Wray made the decision last month to step down in the coming days. Now, Wray stood by all of the decisions of the FBI under his tenure. He did not back down and made clear in his interview with Scott Pelley that his decision to resign had nothing to do with his decision-making, but more shifting the focus to the agents of the FBI. It's important to point out that Wray was appointed by Trump in 2017. Wray was appointed after Trump fired James Comey in the midst of the Trump-Russia investigation. Now, FBI Director Chris Wray stayed on through the Trump administration and through the Biden administration. He is leaving after 7 years, which some FBI directors can stay up to 10 years. But as he pointed out in that clip, any president has the power to replace an FBI director at any time for any reason.
So Wray also, as you know, Rob, made a point to emphasize that China is the greatest threat long-term to the United States and the generation that follows. Talk about why it was so important of a point for him to make.
Right. So for those of us who cover him day in and day out, cover the Justice Department day in and day out, this was not a surprise. Wray at congressional hearings, at press conferences, has made clear that China, he views, is the greatest threat, particularly the People's Republic of China's government. He says that they're using their advanced cyber technology skills, their hacking skills to steal government information, to steal proprietary U.S. information for the benefit of their government. And he said and repeated these warnings that he has said in the past. They have embedded themselves in U.S. infrastructure across the country, waiting for a time where it might be, good for them to act and take down that infrastructure. We saw just in the lead up to the presidential election, actually, reporting here at CBS that the Chinese government had infiltrated multiple telecom companies throughout the country. AT&T, Verizon, these companies were infiltrated by Chinese hackers, and they could have listened in on some of the most sensitive government systems.
Let me ask you about the special prosecutor and the special counsel, Jack Smith, who resigned as the special counsel for the DOJ over the weekend. So what happens now to the report that Jack Smith had been working on? Does it? Will the American people will never see the light of that report?
Well, just to back up a little bit, the Justice Department didn't announce Jack Smith's resignation like they did his appointment. Instead, this was slipped in a footnote in a court document on Saturday. And so they basically said that Jack Smith had left the department on Friday. But as you pointed out, his report, a 2-volume report he's revealed in court documents dealing with both his investigation into Trump's conduct after the 2020 election and the president-elect's alleged mishandling of classified records. Both of those cases resulted in cases that have now been dismissed. Trump and his co-defendants denied wrongdoing on all those cases, but the report itself still exists. The Attorney General, by Justice Department regulation, receives that report and has already done so from the special counsel. And Attorney General Merrick Garland has made good on a promise that he made in the beginning of his term that he would release publicly any report by any special counsel. He did so in the Biden investigation as well, that was talked in the beginning. And so now the future of the specific January 6th, 2020 election report, that hangs in the balance as appeals on the classified documents case go on. So we await a ruling from the judge in the coming hours or days.
All right, Rob Ligari for us this morning. Rob, thank you.
Thanks, Bud.
President Biden is set to give his final foreign policy speech in just a few hours. What to expect as he outlines his legacy. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over the weekend to discuss the ongoing negotiations over a ceasefire and a hostage release deal in Gaza. According to the White House, the two leaders discussed the deal based on the arrangement outlined by the president last year. Joining us now for more is CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio. Ramy, so it seems there are certain days where it feels like we are getting very close, the United States, in negotiating a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and then there are other days where it feels like we're really far apart. What can you tell us about this call between the two leaders and where do things stand?
Vlad, yeah, and you know, it feels like, at least here on the ground, that we haven't been this close to some kind of ceasefire deal, at least in the past few months, at least since autumn. Just this morning, though, CBS News learned from an official close to those talks that they are now waiting for Hamas's approval of a final draft that had been submitted to both Hamas and Israel. That source said if it is approved, then that would be considered a breakthrough. Yes, I said it, breakthrough. Then negotiators in Doha could go into what they're calling closing talks. That source also said the parties are not there yet, but there's a potential for what they're calling real progress. As for that call between Biden and Netanyahu, which, by the way, could be one of the last times they actually talk as heads of state on an equal level, a White House readout said that Biden talked about how the balance of power in this region has changed quickly, and changed arguably very much in Israel's favor. Biden touched on Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north, agreeing to that ceasefire with Israel, the implosion of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria, and the apparent weaker state of Iran because of those. Biden, for his part, no surprise, called for that ceasefire hostage deal with Hamas. It's believed 7 of the roughly 100 hostages are Americans. And of course, he'd like to see them home on his watch before it ends. And that happens 7 days from today, Vlad.
Ramy Inocencio reporting from Tel Aviv for us this morning. Thank you, Ramy. Well, the conflict in Gaza posed a major challenge for President Biden in his final years of his administration. In just a few hours, he would deliver remarks at the State Department on his administration's foreign policy legacy as a whole and what the White House is calling his efforts to strengthen America and lead the world. Senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang joins us now live from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Weijia, it's good to see you. So what can we expect to hear from the president with regards to what he feels he accomplished during his 4 years in office and what he hopes people will remember him for?
Vlad, it's always great to be with you, and I think we should expect to hear from President Biden exactly what we heard from him about 4 years ago when he delivered his first foreign policy speech, also at the State Department, claiming that America is back and that diplomacy is back at the center of the U.S.'s foreign policy, and it certainly was for him. So he will draw upon that American leadership and why it is so critical, not just to sum up his own achievements, which we expect him to lay out how he sees them, but also as a message to the incoming president, President-elect Trump, who does not exactly see the worldview in the same way when it comes to alliances and partnerships with allies. In terms of what we will hear from Biden specifically, he will talk about bolstering NATO. He will talk about the U.S.'s role in Israel defending itself against Hamas. Of course, he will talk about Ukraine and Russia's aggression that continues. And he will talk about the future in terms of AI, in terms of China, and why that all matters, especially in light of what we just heard on 60 Minutes, what a threat China continues to pose. And Vlad, one thing that we will be watching for also is how he defends his policy on Afghanistan, which critics have argued is his worst decision when it comes to foreign policy. But he is going to talk about how, he was able to end America's longest war, how he is not turning over a war to Afghanistan to Trump, and try to frame it as a success. But certainly, there were lots of missteps as the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan, Vlad.
Absolutely. And Weijia, so the question, of course, then becomes the worry that the president may have that the president-elect, President Trump, undoes some of the things that President Biden will presumably be touting during this speech. And it's impossible for him to give assurances, for example, to President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine that the United States won't pull its funding or its supply of materiel and arms to that country in its fight against Russia. So is he thinking about that the next president could actually unravel anything that he's going to talk about today that he sees as an accomplishment?
Well, Vlad, he has certainly already indicated that in previous speeches when it comes to foreign policy, especially, as you mentioned, so sharply when it comes to Ukraine, because Trump and his allies have all but said it is time to stop writing the checks to Ukraine. So I expect that Biden will talk about why these conflicts abroad matter to national security. You might remember he actually delivered a primetime speech all about national security and these two conflicts and tried to draw the lines because he was making the case that we have to be entangled, even if it's not directly with troops, that the U.S. has to exhibit that leadership in order to protect American interests and protect the homeland. But of course, critics have strongly disagreed with that, including Republicans, because they think that the U.S. has become too financially involved, at least when it comes to Ukraine. And so he will have to lay that out. And I do think you're exactly right, Vlad, that this speech is not only about himself, but about the future.
All right, Weijia Jiang for us at the White House this morning. Thank you, Weijia.
Sure.
All right, folks, have you seen this picture of the fire around the Hollywood sign circulating on social media? It is fake. It is AI generated, but a lot of people may not know that. So up next, our CBS News Confirmed team has a look at how to identify what's real and how officials are trying to stop the spread of misinformation in Los Angeles. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We're continuing to monitor the Southern California wildfires in Los Angeles that have claimed the lives of at least 24 people and destroyed thousands of structures. CBS News Los Angeles just spoke to CAL FIRE for an update on the effort to contain the flames. Let's dip in and listen.
This has been an incredible firefight. Many of our firefighters were on the front lines for 48 hours straight, working relentless to just evacuate residents, to do structured defense, to fight back hurricane-level winds that were fanning this fire. It has been exhausting. And now, as we move into not only this effort for almost a week long, we are preparing what could be another round of significant winds that could not only increase our fire activity on the Palisades and the Eden fire, and so we're watching that closely, but also could fan new ignitions across Southern California, causing new fires. And so we remain on high alert despite the progress we've been making on the two major fires.
Well, I did want to ask you about that because, it's one of those things, even though they are Santa Ana winds, and we're concerned about that and that direction, can the winds change here? And are you more concerned about the fires where they're burning themselves right now, or are you more concerned about those potential new threats?
We are definitely concerned about the Santa Ana winds. They are a dangerous wind event that is life-threatening. These are hurricane-level winds. They lower the humidity, and it is almost impossible to stand in front of a Santa Ana wind and hold back the fire front. And so that becomes a major challenge. That's why the first night on Tuesday of last week, we were simply focused on evacuating residents. But once the winds end, we don't necessarily let down our guard because, as you mentioned, the winds could then shift. We could then see fire move in other directions. We could see it to become a topography-driven fire, meaning that the winds aren't pushing it one way, the topography is pushing the fire another way. And so we have to continuously monitor the weather. We have meteorologists at the incidents of every one of our fires. We have predictive services that regionally make sure that we, again, are continuously monitoring weather conditions because, again, it is the weather that has been driving these unprecedented fires.
So this is a tough battle, even if you're just dealing with one fire, right, for days. But they've been fighting, half a dozen fires for the last week now. Do they have the relief they need? Do you have enough water? Do you have enough engines? Do you have enough crews?
We have brought in hundreds of firefighters from neighboring states like Oregon, Arizona, you name it, across the West. They have sent us additional resources. That has helped. Second, we have early on activated our military partners. The National Guard has brought in the entire national fleet of modular air firefighting systems. These are C-130 military aircraft that are retrofitted to help us in the firefight. We have 11 military helicopters that have been rotating in and out of the firefight. And so we definitely are mobilized with a significant amount of resources to aid the firefighters who, again, were on the front lines for days straight at a time. And again, while we are making sure that we try to give them rest, we are bringing in the preparation for even more. But I'll tell you, not that long ago when we had a little bit of a flare-up on the Palisades fire, moving the fire towards the Brentwood area, we had to wake up firefighters that had been working 2 days straight, wake them up and put them back onto the front lines. And so we are working hard to balance ensuring that our firefighters are getting rest, but also making sure that at the end of the day, we're prioritizing the battle of this firefight.
One concern I have after watching 60 Minutes last night is that the Los Angeles County Fire Chief, Anthony Maroney, said that in the particular fire, in the Eden fire, you look at 8,000 homes lost. You technically need about 3 fire engines to be able to take care of one home being on fire. You think about 8,000, he was saying more than 24,000 engines were needed potentially to get this fire under control. We just don't have those kinds of numbers.
While the state has increased the investment in our firefighting resources, we have added Black Hawk helicopters to our fleet across the state. We've added C-130s, the first state-owned air fleet that's really the largest in the nation, 50 aircraft, hundreds and thousands of firefighters, more investments in there. But our strategy has really been, in addition to the fire suppression resources, our strategy has been focused on forest health and community preparedness. We have to make sure that homes are hardened and retrofitted, that they have good defensible space so that they can withstand fires. Now, again, this was a firestorm. It is very difficult to do anything but to hold back the flames and get people out of the way. But our strategy has to continue to be focused on community resiliency because there are not enough fire engines in the entire nation to put a fire engine in front of every single home. And that is why, again, early preparations by homeowners is so critical before these fires break out.
Yeah, we saw that on Saturday as that fire was moving toward the Brentwood area. Those homes that had really done good clearing seem to be more protected. Chief Daniel Berlant, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
And thank you for all of
All right, we're going to obviously continue to follow this ongoing situation. Those are our partners at CBS Los Angeles who've been covering this story, obviously, from the beginning there. And you could see that interview with Cal Fire. Having an issue here with my earpiece, but you can see that interview with Cal Fire is one that is certainly bringing the information that people need. The information that people do not need is the disinformation that has been circulating on social media about these wildfires. AI-generated images and video have confused users by showing the Hollywood sign on fire. We showed you that earlier when, in fact, that sign was not on fire. Sites like InfoWars have made claims that firefighters were using, get this, women's handbags to put out some of the fires. Yeah. And there are people who see this information and they take it to be true. The Los Angeles Fire Department, of course, confirmed that they frequently use canvas bags filled with water to douse the flames. So I want to bring in Rona Tarrant, who's joining me on set. She's the executive editor of CBS News Confirmed and has been covering and looking at all the misinformation that's out there. So, Rona, I guess maybe before we sort of get into some specifics, just explain how misinformation spreads around a big story like this.
Well, like you said, this story is sort of primed for misinformation. You have this huge event, a lot happening. A lot of things coming out very slowly. And what happens when there's no information? There's a vacuum. So misinformation sort of fills that space. Often for a story like this as well, people are going onto social media to get the latest updates. And then you have people who are pushing out fake visuals to sort of, number one, for clout. They're also looking for attention. They might be looking to grow their audiences. And they're also looking to mislead as well. So those two examples that you mentioned, there are sort of two buckets for visual misinformation. The first is AI-generated content. Now, those Hollywood signs, I will say to you, I was looking at those with my team. We do this all the time. I was shocked by how realistic they looked.
It looked pretty real.
I said to them, like, I would actually have trouble if I was on my phone scrolling, identifying this as AI-generated content. Now, we know the Hollywood sign came up directly and they said, it's not on fire. But a lot of people were scrolling on social media and they believed it to be true. Now, the biggest problem, and bigger than AI, is videos taken out of context. Now, you just mentioned the handbag. You know where that came from? That was actually a news clip. Someone captured a firefighter dousing flames with a bag. And people said it's a woman's handbag because they don't have the right equipment. So these are sort of the two main categories we see. One is AI and one is videos taken out of context. And videos taken out of context, they're actually much cheaper and easier to do because you just put a different headline on it, put it out there, and, so chaos.
I mean, I myself, I remember in the early days of the fire, I saw a video of a man with, I'm a huge cat, like an animal lover. I saw a man who seemed to be receiving a cat that firefighters pulled out of the fire, and he was crying and getting all emotional. And it took me a little while. Obviously, I never share these things. I send them to people like you, or I try to find the source of the video so I can make sure that it's current. And it wasn't. It was from a couple of years ago, right? So you have that even for us in this business. Sometimes we look at things and we say, well, it looks like it may be current or it may be of this moment, but the context is important. We saw that, for example, with people filming people coming out of their homes who are evacuating and getting and circulating videos and calling those folks looters.
Exactly. So that also was news footage. So people filmed that. They clipped the piece of where it looked like people robbing a home. They put a headline on it and they put it out on social media. Now, I was speaking to some experts over the weekend because one thing I've noticed about a lot of these agencies is previously they used to sort of be above this stuff. They wouldn't directly address rumors on social media. But a lot of agencies now are coming out and directly speaking about these rumors on social media and saying that's not true. And I'll give you two examples. FEMA, you might remember they had a rumor response during Helene and Milton.
Yes.
They have reactivated that for these California fires. Rumor response. So they have that back up and going. And essentially what they're doing is saying, it's not true that you just get a one-off payment. It's not true that if you apply for disaster relief that we will seize your property. So they are directly countering a lot of these things. The LA Fire Department Public Information Officer, he's really busy trying to put out all this information, but he's also countering some of those false claims on social media. So he literally said last week, to counter some online misinformation, no, we are not calling on the general public to come and help us fight these wildfires. No, we are not asking the general public to come out and help us clean up. Because these are actually, people are making decisions based on these things that they're seeing on social media.
That's right.
Exactly. So before, with agencies, they would kind of hope that some of these rumors would just go away. But now, because a lot of people are not just getting some of their information on social media, they're getting all of their information on social media. So they're coming out and saying, like, this is not true. So oftentimes, they used to try to be above this stuff, but now they're saying it's actually too important. The stakes are too high.
So before you go, I think it's important for you to share with our viewers what they can do to educate themselves when they see something that they might, because a lot of times what I think that these clips do, especially, is they hit an emotional nerve, and that's how people react to them. So what should people be looking out for, especially given that we haven't even talked about this, some of the misinformation are coming from public officials themselves.
Right.
Like people who should know better and who are using it for political purposes.
Right. Conflicting
so what should people
information.
be thinking? Yeah.
So there's two things. One, if it's a visual, if you think it's AI generated, there's a few things you can do. And I'll give you a really quick tip. AI is really good at the center of an image. So it's good at like a person. There's something in the foreground. It doesn't put so much effort into the background. So oftentimes you'll see messy things in the background like text or trees. So look for visual clues. As it gets better, that's going to get harder. The second thing, which is actually more important, is about your own due diligence. So when you see something on social media platforms, get off the platform and look it up yourself. Look at other sources. Look at reliable information. And one thing one of the experts I spoke to over the weekend said to me, and it's a really important thing, don't share it with your family and friends unless you have done your due diligence, because if it's coming from you, they trust you. So it has that extra validity on it. So always, always pause before you share.
Such important information. Rona Tarrant, love having you in the studio to talk about this stuff. It's so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so if you're looking for a way to help the victims of those wildfires, here's some information that we want to share with you. You can go to theredcross.org/CBS. Okay, it has been 15 years since Haiti was devastated by a 7.0 magnitude earthquake, and still many residents are struggling to rebuild, especially as the country grapples with widespread gang violence. We're going to have more on that next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Two North Korean soldiers are being held captive by Ukraine. That's according to South Korea's spy agency. The soldiers were fighting alongside Russian forces in Russia's Kursk border region. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will release them if North Korea agrees to a swap for Ukrainian prisoners being held in Russia. Seoul says about 300 North Korean troops have been killed in combat. It has been 15 years since a 7.0 magnitude earthquake shook Haiti, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Another 300,000 suffered injuries. In some cases, many Haitians are still grappling with rebuilding as gang violence rises in the island nation. Journalist Jonathan Katz knows what the earthquake was like firsthand. He is a writer at the Rocket.News. Jonathan, you and I first met when we were both covering the earthquake in Haiti back in 2010. I arrived the day after the earthquake, but you were actually there when the quake struck. You've written about your experiences subsequent to the earthquake and what Haiti has been able to accomplish and to not accomplish in the years since. Can you just reflect on that earthquake and your reflections of it and how you view what happened 15 years ago today?
Yeah, well, first of all, I can't believe it's been 15 years. In some ways, it feels like it was yesterday, but in some ways, it feels like it was a lifetime ago. It was horrific, as I'm sure anybody who just heard your introduction can imagine. I was lucky to escape with my life. My house collapsed around me. A lot of other people were not so lucky. There was a lot of hope in the aftermath of the earthquake that there would be some kind of major rebuilding, some kind of major reconstruction, both political and economic, as well as infrastructure. And that just simply didn't happen. And instead, Haiti has been on a downward spiral, really, for the last 15 years, and in a lot of ways, most acutely since the assassination of the president in 2021. And things are just not very good right now.
You know, one of the things, and you wrote a great book about Haiti and your experiences and what the Haitian people went through, called The Truck That Went By. So I encourage our viewers to check it out because it really is an incredible book that details the struggles that the Haitians have undergone since the earthquake. But I'm curious as to your thoughts as to, yes, natural disasters strike, and they strike in Haiti just like they strike in Los Angeles, and yet there's another sort of disaster that's unfolded over the course of Haiti's history, which is how the international community and specifically the United States has treated the country. Can you just sort of give us a little bit of flavor around that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing to keep in mind, and this is true in Los Angeles as well, is that there's no such thing really as a natural disaster. You have natural forces that act on, human-built environments, human-built systems, but without the human system part of it, you don't have a disaster. And if that system is corrupt, if that system is broken, that makes the disaster worse. A 7.0 earthquake like the one that hit Haiti 15 years ago needn't have been the deadliest earthquake ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere. It was because of centuries of direct and intentional impoverishment of Haiti by the international community, by the United States. The United States occupied Haiti militarily for 19 years in the 20th century and has been operating on it ever since. There's a lot of other, pieces here, but, in the aftermath of the earthquake, the United States came down and meddled in a presidential election. The president who came to power, who was the U.S.-backed president, was extremely corrupt. And he ruled for 5 years, and then his handpicked successor ended up being like even more authoritarian, to a lot of people's surprise, than his predecessor had been. And then he was killed in 2021. And there was an opportunity after that there was a broad-based coalition of Haitian parties, Haitian groups that came together. They called themselves the Montana Accords. It was named for a hotel in Port-au-Prince where they had met. And they had a proposal to have a transitional government, to hold new elections, to put Haiti back on a democratic footing. And the Biden administration just ignored it. They backed this kind of feckless, doddering neurosurgeon, and they just sort of allowed the situation to collapse, and gangs have come into the vacuum and filled it, and they're kind of running the show right now on the ground.
It's still a horrible situation, Jonathan. I thank you for your reporting there. Thank you for keeping the Haitian people. You've written about Haiti over the course of the last 15 years. Even before that, obviously, you were the AP reporter that was on the ground there, so you wrote about it before the earthquake. But I know that it's near and dear to your heart, and I know that the Haitian people appreciate your reporting and they appreciate what you do. I encourage our viewers to check out your Substack. I'm a subscriber. You write about a lot of other things, but you really are an incredible journalist, and I always thank you for sharing a little bit of your time with us during this horrific, terrible anniversary. We appreciate it as always, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlad.
All right. We're going to have much more news ahead on streaming on CBS News 24/7. Stick around. We'll be right back. There are growing concerns about air quality in Southern California as the fires continue to burn. CBS News chief medical correspondent Dr. John LaPook was on CBS Mornings earlier today, and he explained how you can protect yourself.
Indoors, close the doors, close the windows. If you have an air conditioner, set it so it's on recirculate, so you're not sucking in the air from the outside that may be full of dust. And then if you have an air filter, air purifier, use that. If you don't, there are do-it-yourself ones with a box fan and filters for less than $100 that you can make. Outdoors, the first thing you want to do is, what's the air quality? So go to airnow.gov. Okay. Put in your zip code or the name of your town. If the air quality index, the AQI you've been hearing about, is 50 or less, it's considered safe. Higher, the worse. Then minimize your activity, because you do a lot of activity, you're sucking in more air. You know that as an athlete. And then consider wearing a mask.
All right. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with the final look at the national forecast. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Vlad, thanks a lot. Let's talk about what's happening across the nation. We've been talking a lot, of course, about the fires in Southern California. Talking about the rest of the country, there's a Clipper system bringing very cold air to the Great Lakes. We've got heavy rain and a strong cold front moving through portions of the southeast. You can see heavy rain over northern Florida. We've got rain in Georgia as well. Take a look at the Arctic air moving in, though, over the northern plains, where highs today in spots like St. Cloud, Minnesota are in the single digits, and that cold heading toward the northeast starting tomorrow. Vlad, back over to you.
All right, Kate, thank you very much. We'll check in with you tomorrow. Appreciate it. That does it for me, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco, where we are awaiting a news conference from the mayor of Los Angeles. That will be at the top of the hour. This is CBS News 24/7.